Okay, welcome everybody. This is the IOTA Shimmer community call. This is the governance call, Thursday, the 8th of June. Um, we are here in the IOTA Discord. And as always, we talk about governance, we talk about the treasury, we talk about what are our plans ahead. And yeah, today, not a big schedule from my side. What I actually did over the last two sessions was, I think, hopefully explained a little bit well how the planned securing of the Shimmer community treasury in the Shimmer EVM would work with all the smart contracts and all the potential attack vectors and what we can do to avoid them and which matrix we likely might want to choose. Um, this is all an ongoing process, yeah. So it's not something that we can expect to be happening soon, or also not potentially directly at launch of the EVM, because what we need is we need our smart contract devs to implement those stuff, and we also first need to test it. So this is something that is going to be going and going to get done, but it's not something that is like priority one for the EVM network start to be in place. Yeah, and this also gives us time to really nail down the processes and prepare everything, think everything properly through, so that we don't miss anything and stuff. And one part of this whole thing is adjusting our rule sets that we have. And maybe you know that we have a very, 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 very intense and long Shimmer governance framework that basically explains, not just explains, it really describes everything around governance in the Shimmer network, how it works, who has got to do what, who has which rights, how do you submit a proposal, what are the requirements for the different stages and phases of a proposal, what are the form all the stuff we have defined. And as we are adding another layer to this framework with the with the possibility of doing votes in the Shimmer EVM. We of course have to add and adjust some parts of the framework, and this is what I have started a bit. Um, and I thought I'll just go through some of the important things. I'm actually thinking about the best way, because what we will do is we will have to make a proposal in the end, yeah, to adjust the governance framework so that we can add the new features and the new rules. Um, our experience, I think, has shown with the last votes that these long, very, very long documents are barely read by the voters. It's challenging. I mean, I think reading the governance framework is like 45 pages of uh, pretty complex stuff if you're not really into it. Um, and so I'm basically looking on a way that will actually only highlight the changes to the document. So, and
Um,
I saw this in Bankless DAO. They do it similar. They have also Bankless has um, a very similar, very extensive. They call it their constitution, I think, or their whatever. What they do is basically they do the same. They do every 4 months they create an update to this seasonal specification or this governance specification, and basically what they do is they post a Google Doc with basically, okay, this was the text before, and the text should be changed to that. Yeah, where they just highlight all the things that should be changed, but they don't put the whole document and the whole text because everything else stays as it is, um, and just highlighting the changes. I think this is similar way that we should go, because otherwise we will just overwhelm the community and the voters with things that are not necessary. And also, it gets complicated. I mean, if you put the two documents together, you will not be able to figure out what exactly was changed. Yeah. So the good thing is that we have GitHub and we have the original document in GitHub, and GitHub has this very nice versioning and history control. So I'll basically prepare the document in HackMD, and then I'll basically going to add it to GitHub, and GitHub will then tell me all the changes, and then I can take these changes and put them likely into a Google Doc and make it visual approachable also for people so that they really see, okay, this was the text before, this is added, this has been removed. I think that's the only way how people can really understand those changes that are coming.
Yeah, I know on engineering documents that are like 400 pages and they get updated every year.
Yeah, same.
They only
Yeah,
put the changes in the first, like literally after the cover page. You
yeah,
get your changes on the revisions, and then the
that's it.
document after that. So
That's
you
it.
don't need to go through the whole thing.
Yeah,
That's
you
definitely
put
the best
yeah,
way.
yeah, you put the change log at the beginning. I mean, here will be sometimes it's there will be a lot of changes, but sometimes it's really just words, yeah. So if you see my screen on the left side, is the original Shimmer governance framework as it is currently in the wiki. Um,
Right.
and on the right side, I have copied it from the wiki and put it. Why is it not coming here? And put it into a hackmd. Um,
Hmm.
and you see that because we didn't know that is coming, we were all the time, whenever we were speaking about phase 3, we were writing the Firefly vote. Yeah, so the first thing that
Right.
I will have to do is everywhere remove the wording Firefly vote and make it neutral, because it could be Firefly
Hmm.
or it could be EVM vote. Yeah, and so
Hmm.
there will be a lot of these small changes just to make the wording consistent and to make it not fixed on Firefly anymore. Yeah. So these
Well,
are a lot of things. Yeah.
and let me. So I literally just talked about this with the committee today. That I was explaining how we were discussing like potentially when there might be an update to the framework,
Yeah.
and I kind of thought we were going to still be keeping into the smart contract stuff, but if we start moving into updating the framework, I can spend some time on the committee getting all our lessons learned and
Mhm.
um, sort of things that we've seen, might need to be updated
Yeah.
um, after operating. So, if is that going to be something we kind of go over the next month or so?
Yes, if you absolutely would love that, that would, and I think it might really maybe also make sense to um to have that maybe happening together. So maybe we will put up two governance proposals. Yeah, one would be adjusting the governance specification or the framework, and the other one would be adjusting the community treasury specification. Even if it's only a small changes, what you come up to, it
Yeah.
might be good to do it together. Yeah, and also then
Hmm.
otherwise, if we wait too long and then will be big changes, there will be a lot of things to explain. Yeah, and so if there are things that
Right.
you say, yeah, cool. It just really makes sense to change this now. It's maybe not a big
Right.
thing, but it will make your work easier and it will make it better defined and better
Yeah.
adjusted. So then let's let's put up maybe two proposals to adjust both documents so that they fit uh, that they really fit the state of what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, it's little wordings here and there. I think it's not too, there's not too much.
Mhm.
However, maybe later we can discuss the whole. Yeah, I'll talk about it later when
Yeah.
we get there. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll get with the
Yeah.
committee and we'll start getting
Yeah.
those
That would
little
be
things
cool.
all together at once. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Awesome.
so here basically there will be, like I said, there will be a lot of little changes in also in this table stuff. Basically, mostly all the stuff for phase three will have to be added. Um, I think that we will basically have um, two phase three. One thing I think we should call phase three treasury vote, and the other one phase three governance vote, or whatever. Maybe we'll find a better word, but that we have a different wording for the two types of votings that can happen in phase three. And so this would also then require some small adjustments to the things that happen in phase two. Because in phase two, we require that the proposal submitter already submits the participation event for the nodes. Yeah. So if we would do a vote on the Tangle, phase two will need to submit the participation event following the specification for the Hornet nodes. But if you do a treasury vote that should happen in the EVM, you don't need to submit a Hornet participation event. Then you will need to submit um, a standardized the transaction data basically that says, okay, um, this amount of tokens, this token, let's assume the treasury holds several tokens. Now it has already soon, and there might be others. So you specify the asset that should be transferred, you specify the amount, and you specify the receiver address where the asset should go. And of course, the question and additional information that that voters should see when they enter the voting application. Yeah, so then they will have a proposal title, the identifier number. They will have a text of the question. Yeah, basically, okay, should 100 million Shimmer tokens be sent to address blah 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 blah. So this will you will need to submit in phase two already. So these are small changes, like I said, to the details, what happens in the phase. Um, there should, I think, nothing needs to be changed in the guiding principle things. Maybe potentially there's, I think somewhere we talk about spending funds. I will have to look through that if there is something like all these things I will bring into our meetings first. Yeah, so that we once I have it in a Google file where we see the changes, I'll bring them all up here and we can go through them step by step. Where basically we all see, okay, this is what I would suppose to change. Let's talk about it if we have other wordings or if we think that doesn't make sense, and then we can basically all together create the proposal based on all those changes.
Real quick, Philo.
Mm,
I heard you say that there would be so you want to keep. So just
mhm.
trying to follow here.
Yeah.
We went from Firefly to then doing all voting on EVM to Tally to now we're going to keeping Firefly and EVM2 layer 2.
Didn't we say that we will basically use the tally thing only for spending funds from the treasury, but all other governance votes should continue happen in Firefly?
Did
Yeah,
we? I can't even remember now.
I think like let's say 2, 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, because kind of we were like, yeah,
Laura, you
yeah.
been taking meeting notes?
I mean, I have no problem. For
No,
me,
no,
it
I don't know.
yeah,
I know. We should get,
for
we
me,
should
yeah,
get back into meeting notes because this is what happens
yeah.
sometimes when
Yeah,
yeah,
we were talking
You,
about, yeah, Laura, you have it?
yes, so I have some, like at some points I was sick and so on, so this is where I don't have them.
Hmm.
But
okay.
I have a couple of them, I can send them later, like.
Yeah, just drop them in
Okay.
the channel. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
will
got so
collect.
much in my in my
Yeah.
head,
Sure.
so I may be confused, to
Yeah.
be honest.
No, I think I actually proposed that we basically do all the voting in EVM, but then there were quite, I mean, also you were quite like, but we have Firefly and people are used to Firefly, and then we don't
I
want
know.
to force them to move their tokens into
Well,
EVM. Yeah.
and I thought, and I agree with that. I agree with that in the
Mhm.
sense of I feel like either one, like if you do it all on Firefly, you miss EVM, the layer two people. If you do it on layer two, you miss the layer one people.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess ideally the best thing would be to somehow conduct a vote where all token holders layer one or layer two are included, but
Yeah.
technically that's not applicable.
Yeah.
It's just not realistic. Um, so yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's just
Well, maybe really maybe we have to get a little bit more opinions on that. We can
yeah,
maybe put up some polls or something. First of all, I have to really maybe, I think I have to make a little write-up that explains it a little bit better, and
yeah,
maybe post it or maybe post it in the governance forum and see what people think. Um, I mean, I think, yeah, why not do it all in tallies? Not a problem. But yeah, there might be people that say, well, I don't trust the EVM. The first 6 months, I won't put any tokens there because it's like, well, only a staking network, not secure. You know how people are. And
yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
they would say, but because they want to force me, so I cannot vote. And then we're gonna have like drama all day for nothing. And so I
Right.
think we said, okay, because we might anyway only have like 1, 2 votes about
Mhm.
spending tokens from the treasury per year. It will make sense that all the other stuff we can just continue using Firefly, which people are used to. And if
That's
it's
true.
just about these big decisions, okay, give the committee another $5 million for the next year, then because it can only happen in EVM, then people
Right.
need to do it in the EVM. Everything else we
Right.
can still use Firefly.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And that was kind of what my takeaway from those. I think we had like 2, 3 meetings where we talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then basically we would then have just to define 2 different phase 3 executions. Yeah, and to get these phase 3 executions, we will have some small different processes for the moderators, what they are required to do, and so on and so on. Yeah, a lot of, like I said, a lot of removing of the word Firefly somewhere. Phase 1 and stays the same. Phase 2, some small changes likely about, okay, when, depending which kind of proposal you are submitting, if it's a treasury or if it's a normal governance vote. And in phase 3, I haven't finished it yet, but what I want to show it here. Um, is it? Okay. So this is basically left side is the old text and the right side is how I would think to edit. Yeah. So maybe I just remove the old one. It's maybe better like this. So I would basically add then say, okay, you have a phase 3 treasury vote with the Shimmer EVM network. And here, this is not yet complete, but here, first of all, I would define all the important parameters that are relevant for the EVM vote. So which token is used? What is the max supply of this token? How does one vote, what represents a vote, which is different than what we have in the layer 1 with Firefly. Um, the parameters, like we have talked about, the voting delay, the voting period, the time lock period, the required quorum. We would here, if we make the decision to go with this allow listed proposers, we would specify them here. Also with everywhere we will put the addresses. So this is then really a document where people can check. Um, a little bit the voting process itself. I wouldn't put here. Yeah. So same as we haven't put in how the Firefly voting works and how the node counting works, because there's a separate specification for this. Same would be here. Yeah. So we will of course have from engineering a full documentation on how all the smart contracts work, how users interact with the system, and all this stuff. This will be an own GitHub repo and an own section in the wiki, of course. And then we can just refer to okay the voting processes as described in the documentation. Yeah. But there are some tasks then for the moderators because here, unlike they would be the ones that will add the proposal into the system. So it's not required any node operators to do anything, but here the governance moderators with their multisig wallet will be one of the only allowed admins of Tally where they can put a proposal into the system. And so we will need to define, of course, how they do this and how we make sure that they don't do any mistakes there, yeah, especially in checking that the amounts, that the token addresses and the contract addresses are really correct before they sign it with their multisig wallet. Yeah, and so this is a little bit stuff that we'll have to define here. The announcement is likely going to be the same, yeah, and then the rest also, yeah. And then I think there will be some stuff around, yeah, counter proposals. Yeah, this is something for phase 2 then. This doesn't potentially is not really relevant. Seasons, I'm also going through, so because there might be some things we can adjust here also, like I don't know if the season still makes sense because we
You
actually would
know,
yeah
that comes up because it's like, is the treasure in season 1 or season
yeah
2? I don't know. We should just call it quarters. I don't know. Like,
yeah
I mean, it's
and
season sounds
do
snazzy,
we
but
do we actually need them? I mean, actually, I think we would have been required to do already another the first seasonal vote. I think we missed it already.
well,
Because we would be already now in season 3, starting on 1st April. And we are entering season 4 already. And we said actually in the end of every season we will make a governance vote. But only if there are changes to the governance framework. Okay, so we didn't make any changes yet. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. That's right. The admins had allowance to change certain things.
Yes.
But I mean, I think it's been
It was
working good.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I agree. I think we should just go to every quarter,
Mhm.
if we were to do that.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
say,
Q1, Q2, Q3. Yeah. Makes much more
but I
sense.
mean, the fact that we're not doing any changes, I think we're already past that because I think if I remember correctly, it was like just in the first like 6 months we might do changes, and then after that it would just be a phase 1, 2, 3 update, which we're gonna do anyway.
Yes.
So
Here we have flexible parameter change, soft consens in phase 2. How long did we define this? Doot, 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 doot. Um, did we define it?
you can look at it another time.
Doesn't.
I'm down for taking the seasons out. Just maybe do
Yeah. Yeah.
quarters per year,
It's
second,
I
first
I'm
quarter,
I'm
second.
good for anything that reduces the size of this document. And if
Simplified.
yeah,
Yeah,
if we don't use the stuff, we can always
yeah.
add it later again if we figure out, oh yeah, it would be cool to have it now, but in the moment, I don't see a need for it.
Maybe just take it all out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah. But these are the parameters still there. Season interval. Yeah, so this is the thing that's like a bit of a stuff to go through. I think the timings and the stuff is still all okay, all good. Even if we had a little bit of the hiccups in the first vote with the counter proposal and all the stuff, but this was because kind of it was like not yet kicked off and Firefly was not ready. Yeah, we only had some delays and some strange timings because we have been waiting for Firefly. Yeah, so now basically we are everything is ready. We can go and we can follow this schedule quite well. Emergency proposals. This is something I will have to read through this because potentially we could here include emergency actions during the time lock for the EVM. Yeah, so if there would be really some shady stuff or we'll figure out there was an attack, potentially then we can add this here to the section for emergency proposals or emergency actions. Yeah, I'll have to go through this and see. But first of all, I really have to get a bit of more feedback also from the engineers and from Dave. So this is still things that I won't put too much work in it now before we don't have it deployed on the test net and we are able to test it out and figure out, okay, how does it feel? How does it work? Then I think it will be much easier to define those things. Now the rest here is kind of blah. There's everywhere some small changes, likely governance events, blah, 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 counter proposal. Okay, the rest here is, yeah, that's cool. That's actually also not part of the specifications anymore, Rationale. Yeah, so this is basically where I'm coming from, what I'm doing currently, besides all the other stuff. I think I will be managing to have a Google Doc ready for next week's meeting where I start to put in all the changes. Yeah, I start from the top down. I put up all the changes that I would propose, and then we can go it through in the meetings, or people can just go through the doc and comment on it and say, "Yeah, that sounds strange." And so this, I think, this process usually works very well. Okay. Well, so I think that's where I'm coming from, and I, from my side, don't have much more. Let me think. I shared a couple of docs last time. Don't know if anybody had chance to read through that stuff, but yeah, this is basically where there's a lot of good info in those documents, especially the stuff from Open Zeppelin around the smart contracts. It's pretty nice.
Nice.
Well, let's talk about the treasury maybe. I'm sure you're getting busy, it seems like. There's like proposals flowing in for
Yeah. Yeah, let me I'll share my screen then if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go here and let's see, I just want to make sure it does the whole screens. Let's do screen. There we go. Let's try that. Okay. Yeah, no, it's been really great. We are getting a ton of proposals in. And a week ago the team kind of said, as we're getting so many proposals and a lot of valuable proposals, very high, $500,000, 1,000 or 100,000, etc. We said we're just going to kind of go on a more waiting period. I know we want to be quick, however, because there's so many, if we just fund what's good, we'd run out of money in a week. So we moved to more of let's just wait till the 15th and assess. I added an archive so the reviewers can say, hey, I approve this, I decline this, or I archive this, meaning, I think this is good. It's $500,000, but should we use half the treasury that's remaining right now? Let's archive this, and then maybe every quarter we'll pull up the archives and we'll look at our treasury
Yeah.
and say, hey, we had a 5x. Now we got $3 million. Let's maybe
Do
we could
something.
fund one of these archives,
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty good. But we've got some really interesting ones. Again, we've had our strategy in a segmented approach, and we have, as the situation has kind of changed in the sense that there's been more clarity on how Shimmer Network is going to be more of a degen DeFi based. We want to kind of support that in the beginning. We think that's very important for the growth of the ecosystem. So we're going to start focusing a little bit more on any DeFi supportive applications. And I've reached out to a lot of DeFi project owners and asked them, would this help? Would that help? What do you guys need? And it does seem like the TIA and IOTA Foundation is supporting a lot of that needed stuff there. And a few of the project owners brought up potentially could the Treasury, is there a way if they put a proposal, could the Treasury support liquidity? So we're entertaining that idea, seeing if it fits the framework, seeing if some of the project owners, and again, this would be not for the Treasury to sort of make money on this liquidity. It would be more that the liquidity is so important. I'm not a DeFi expert by any means. I don't even use DeFi because I've been solely focused in IOTA, but talking to the people that are experts, it's like in the beginning, the way they explain it is if there's yield, consistent yield that people can make money on, of course, there's going to be money coming in. If it's volatile and people just lose money really easy, then they're not going to come. And what happens is the only way to maintain the low volatility and the sort of consistent yield is to have those solid liquidity pools in there, which a lot of tokens actually they have their treasuries and they use this, right? And these maintain these liquidity pools. So we're looking at it, and then we'll to expand on that. Once the money comes in to earn that yield, and there's big players out there apparently that they go into these ecosystems to earn the yield, which the TVL goes up. It really becomes a snowball effect, and if you get the snowball effect, then it just really takes off, and then all these added applications, people actually come in and build on it.
Yeah.
So it's really that sort of Cambrian explosion for the DeFi aspect of liquidity as a huge part of that. So we talked about it. We talked about, well, how would we deal with impermanent loss? Because, that is certainly a risk to it. And again, I think that's where we're thinking about, okay, if some DeFi project owners, and I might do an RFP in this, say, hey, we'd like 50,000 to, each one fairly gets 50,000 or 100,000 or whatever. Whoever submits the proposal for this liquidity, then we're just helping the ecosystem get to that snowball effect. So who knows? I mean, maybe the Treasury would make yield, but maybe it would lose value on impermanent loss. However, if that snowball effect takes, then the Shimmer price is going to do a 1x, 2x, 3x. I mean, this is almost standard in other DeFi when DeFi launches, if it gets to that snowball effect, I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we might lose on that little bit of liquidity provide, but the rest of the treasury, not only the Tangle treasury, but the community treasury, that other 70% there, it's going to do a 3x, right? So we're just looking at it, and we're not taking it lightly. We want to make sure that, one, is this one of the biggest variables that supports growth of DeFi? Two, is it fair? And three, is the benefits going to outweigh the risk of impermanent loss. So we're just having
Yeah.
some initial discussions. Some people have reached out,
Have you
and
have you have you asked Adam from Meadow about this? Because I would be, I mean, I'm very much in favor of that. I would just be
Mhm.
a little bit careful about the non-profit status of the Meadow. I know I think we would need to get an opinion from them if this is
Mhm.
something that is
I
okay as part of the thing, because profits will, if there are, I mean, if you would earn massive yield, okay, profits should not be distributed to members. That's the thing. But
right.
I would get kind of an opinion on them.
I've
Yeah.
checked. I've checked with Adam previously, and I double checked with Paulo, but I'll
Yeah.
specifically ask about sort of yield and farming indexes. From my initial take, and I didn't ask specifically dexes, but sort of profits. As long as the Treasury doesn't issue any financial assets, such as
Mhm.
being a dex, or B, like you said, distribute profits, which we pointed out, then sure, it can take profit as long as it goes back into funding um, projects in the nonprofit aspect.
Yeah.
Um, Saying that makes me think of something that I think we might have missed. It actually just came up now when you said this. The Tangle Treasury is never going to distribute profits. That's a given.
Yeah.
However, if we were to dissolve the Treasury and move the assets back to the Shimmer Community Treasury from the Maidel,
Mhm.
from the Marshall Islands,
Yeah.
there potentially would be a tax implications because then there would be profits. So either A,
Uh-huh.
it could be issued out to projects before the dissolution, maybe any profits, or have to pay tax.
Or have to pay
I'm gonna
tax.
ask
Yeah.
Adam on that.
Yeah.
I think that's more of an issue than losing a nonprofit status, but I will double check on that
Mhm.
for sure.
I think even
So
that, yeah, tax won't, yeah, quietly low. So yeah,
yeah,
not nice, but yeah.
because I remember asking Adam, can we have actual like equity in companies? And he said, you can do whatever and you can make profit. You just can't distribute that profit to shareholders, to members, to managing members, to it has to be put back in and given away basically. And I
Yeah,
said, okay, cool.
that's cool.
So, but yeah, so the DeFi, so this liquidity thing was really interesting, and for the first time, our our ecosystem gets the ability to take some of these funds and potentially get yield, and that's a whole nother thought. So I think the committee's going to talk about that. I think that's maybe we're not really active as we used to be in the years, but I'd be interested to maybe I'll try to do some polls and get active and reach out to different communities on if they feel we almost want to say like, well, what about this is if the community was to say, hey, the Tangle Treasury can work again, or when we do a revision to the framework, should the committee have an ability to uh, uh, stake, offer liquidity, or farm maybe 30% of the allocated um,
Yeah,
uh, funds,
yeah.
but only in our ecosystem,
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
can't go out our ecosystem.
As long as it
So,
is, as it lays around in your wallet, even if it's in your multisig. I mean, if you're not spending it, and if it's just for a 4 week or 6 week or what until you need it,
right.
why not? I mean, it's like
Why not?
very likely going to earn some profits, grow the treasury a little bit. Yeah. So
And the interesting thing we thought about was like when we talked about this, when we were approached with this, we talked about, well, what kind of pairs? I know there's different thoughts of what needed pairs are, and I specifically asked the um, the Dex's leaders, and they thought that one of the big pairs would be an IOTA Shimmer and IOTA USDT, because these are sort of the stables that people will use.
Mm-hmm.
And we as a committee kind of agreed to that in the sense that we're always going to be looking to liquidate SMR to USDT to do payouts, which is not easy, especially with Shimmer, because there's not a lot of liquidity and there's not always OTC buyers. So even if we were to get like a little impermanent loss and we had more USDT and our impermanent loss was because Shimmer went up in price, really doesn't matter because we've got USDT to pay payouts.
Yep.
You know, like it's kind of a win-win in the end. We don't even have to do the liquidation; it gets automated, and potentially we actually don't have an impermanent loss. We actually have positive yield. Same thing with IOTA. If we were to be left with IOTA, there's much more liquidity for IOTA. It would be much easier for the treasury to liquidate that into USDT for grant payouts. So to us, it's helping the community hopefully create that snowball effect. It helps us with liquidation, and potentially we may even make some yield, for the community treasury. Who knows? Which goes back to projects, of course.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest thing that we're initially discussing, of giving a little freedom to the community to not have to do like a phase 3 Firefly vote if we want to farm or do something with those tokens while it's sitting around. That's a big thing. Other than that, I think the two interesting proposals came in. One is now full disclosure, full transparency, definitely a conflict of interest. Garrett's team, Garrett is a reviewer for those that know, submitted an MPC. They've created an MPC, a multi-party computation, which is essentially a bridge. They've tested this during the test network. They have the validators are the major projects in the ecosystem, such as like TanglePay, TangleSwap, ShimmerC. One of the community members, Werner, runs as a validator, etc. And it's interesting because, as we saw, when multi-chain is great, but shockingly, there was complications with their their signers. So one thing I reached out to the DeFi protocols that would use a bridge is, do they use one bridge or can they use two bridges at the same time? And they did say they can use two bridges at the same time, and it would be good to have redundancy. Redundancy being if multi-chain goes down, it would be a shift. It wouldn't be, easy, but they can then shift to using another bridge. So now the other question is, I don't know who's using this bridge in the test network. The application, which the link here, was a little bit lacking detail, which I brought up to Garrett, and he was kind of hoping that the community would define some of the framework on it. Most of the funds, I asked, what are exactly the funds going to be used for? He said most of it's going to be used for auditing, to make sure they get 2 good audits. So one thing is what we're going to do on this is get much more detail. I think he is going to work on the framework. There'll certainly be community input, but and we'll do it in a transparent process. And part of his proposal is that it's to be sort of managed by the community and the validators, as well as there's a whole see, I don't even know if it's in the proposal. I think they're looking to launch a token, and then a part of that token goes to the community treasury, part of it goes to the validators, part of it goes to something else, and I don't know. We just need more detail on it, and we'll be very transparent about it. And of course, he's not reviewing it. So
Yes.
um,
Detail is the most important thing. I mean, even for you, of course, to review it.
Yes.
But also later for the community to use it. I mean, it's definitely a good thing to have more bridges, like you said. I mean, some some DeFi applications, they have like this, they have an integrated bridge. They do this because
Mm-hmm.
it's a nicer UI for their users. So basically they have a tab in their front end that is directly connected to the bridge where you can bridge over. But in
Mm-hmm.
many networks, basically you have a couple of bridges. You bridge your assets from Ethereum into Optimism over the bridge, and then you enter the apps and so you're not basically dependent on the app to have a bridge. You have a general bridge between the networks that where you move your assets over, and then you can interact with all the dApps, and so you have usually a couple of those bridges. And IOTA MPC, if they build one, that's going to be pretty good. Yeah, if it's solid tech and reliable, documented, people will use it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
good thing.
So, and then another interesting one was this. We did a request for a proposal, which
Mhm.
is this page, kind of us, the committee, just being a little bit more active in when we're not getting necessarily certain grants. So this was to kind of create a community incentive program in the aspect of we keep getting content and it's very hard to judge. And I think we're probably spending too much money on content creators, but we want to support the content creators. So a proposal was submitted using Coordinate that basically they'll have a monthly allocation about $4,000 or $5,000 as of today's Shimmer price. And then content creators will go to this group and they will essentially through Coordinate, this whole process of decentralize where each member um, gives each other tokens. You can't keep the token, you have to give it away. And everything is seen publicly. So if you're not giving tokens away, then you won't get any. And it's a very decentralized aspect to where the group governs themselves and they essentially denote the quality of each other. And at the end of the month, those who got the most basically tokens from each other in the group gets a percentage of the airdrop. So if someone's producing nothing, they're going to get no tokens. They don't get any percentage of the airdrop. If they produce a lot and it's quality, they get a lot of tokens. They get a bigger percentage. If they produce stuff, the quality is really bad, the members will not give them tokens. There are some gameable aspects to this, and that has been taken into account in this grant in here. They talk about, a member that wants to get into the group can either KYC themselves, so their MetaMask address is basically connected to an identity, so they can't make basically 7 different identities, and then 6 of those identities give all the tokens to that 7th person, right? Another aspect to get into the group is to have 1 year of known positive content creation in the community. So someone like Cookcraft, right? And then Cookcraft's name is connected to his MetaMask address, or if it's a female, to her MetaMask address. And so it's a proof of reputation or a KYC method. And then there'll be 2 admins that essentially follow that framework. And those admins have been proposed in the proposal are just for 6 months. This is sort of like a test phase. And if it's successful, we can continue it if the community treasury wants, if they want to. And then the group themselves, through those give tokens, would vote who they want to be admins. So it sort of creates the community to govern themselves. And if this thing works and it's not gameable and it manages, I mean, this is something that can expand to, let's say, a moderators group. Now moderators can actually get something that spend time, or if someone creates code and it gets accepted into the code base for IOTA or Shimmer, it could be a coders group. And now it becomes sort of Bankless does it. A lot of others, they have guilds. And these guilds are groups that do work for the community, but doesn't have sort of a CEO. It's just the group managing it themselves. So I think it's a really interesting idea. Milestones are set monthly. So if it gets gamed, if it's not working, we won't accept the next milestone. We're only going to provide the next month airdrop if it's being successful. We're still discussing this. We're still asking for a little bit more detail, but that seems promising aspect. Yeah, then there's several other proposals, some big ones, and we're just taking them in and reviewing them little by little. So it's definitely getting exciting and really good. We had it was interesting. Yeah, banana feed. I don't know about that one, but it's funny because some proposals come in with like no information, and then that. So this Dragon Crypto Gaming is from Avex. I'm not sure we're gonna. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to say anything, but it's very interesting. I was never really into the decentralized gaming, but I'm into like physical real estate. I have a couple real estate properties and rentals, and the aspect where you can buy land and build a shop, and if people use that shop, then you can reap some of the token rewards is a very interesting concept. So I don't know if we're ready for that now. Kind of this may potentially be an archived option. You know what? Something very interesting came out of this was they asked for liquidity. They asked for part of their grant was that to attract new members, one, they need liquidity. So when your character fights and wins, you get this token, right? And this token can be sold for USDT. It could be sold for Bitcoin, whatever. So there's value to it. And they need a liquidity pool to, again, it all comes back to that liquidity when you're trying to have a currency kick off. But so they like something like $40,000 was going to be for this liquidity. But that was part of the grant. And I said, well, why doesn't the Treasury just provide that liquidity, but we do the matching pair? And if, again, we get yield off that, or after 1 year when the pools can be self-sustainable, we can take that 40,000 back minus impermanent loss, or we get yield on it, positive yield, one or the other. So I think this is probably a method for any projects that want yield. We'll support that, but it's not going to be sort of a free yield. It's like, hey, we'll support you guys until this pool can be self-sustainable, and then at that point we'll slowly pull out, and of course not to negatively affect the pool. So I thought that was just something that interesting came up that we agreed upon, and I think it works for both. I think it works for the project because it helps them, but it works for the Treasury where at least we get that back. Another interesting one, which I kind of quite like, but it just came in, so we haven't fully gone into it, was DeFi is a DeFi support application. And part of their proposal is that they'll give a 0.5% of their tokens to the Treasury, but also DeFi commits to spending 10% of the revenue generated by their Blaze token to pay back the grant and every year or whatever. And once the grant is paid back, then of course they stop. So that was interesting.
That's a nice
my eyes always. Yeah.
I've
Well,
talked
that was a good question because Cowie reviewed that and he said he didn't see any activity on the Twitter account, but I think a few of you guys know this team. So
I had a couple of talks with them. I mean, they're long time in Touchpoint. And they have been very busy because they have been deploying on Polygon. Yeah, so they got a grant from Polygon, I think.
Good.
And I think they're on Polygon and Avalanche, or I think on 2-3 chains already. That's quite interesting concept and in my opinion, a quite professional team. They're not like they're not like 19-year-old NFT crypto degens. They have some pretty solid background also in finance. So
yeah,
good.
And a tier 2 47,000. I mean, we've seen some what seems to be small projects asking for like 120,000, but the when you look at how much work might be involved, it doesn't seem that much. It's very interesting. But yeah, this one This one seems very interesting. I like the giving back, and I like that they're in other protocols. We've yet to fund anything that's in another ecosystem that will come to ours. That was another thing, actually, with the Dragon one, because I said, look, 200,000 definitely right now is probably going to be too difficult. And we asked, this seems like a lot, and you've already built it on Avalanche. So why is it so expensive if you're simply kind of copy and pasting it? And they said that what they're going to do is they're creating a multi-chain system where there'll be a map on Shimmer, and kind of you can go back and forth to maps.
Mhm.
However, there's no bridge, so you can't bring your weapons. I don't even think you can bring your character. So that's something I'm a little hesitant about. I would like to see sort of like a bridge aspect to where now you're combining two ecosystems in this game and expanding it. But what I did say to them is, are you looking to do other ecosystems besides Shimmer? And they said yes. And I said, well, maybe if you find another ecosystem, grant treasury, and we can split
Yes.
this and share it,
Yes.
and partner. So I'm not saying we would, but I like that concept of partnering with another
I
ecosystem
mean,
treasury.
especially if they're building such an multi-chain infrastructure, it automatically has advantage for the other networks also. So this shouldn't be
Exactly.
just financed from one network and then you can connect to all other EVM chains out there, but the Shimmer community paid for all that, which is
Right.
cool if it would be a real bridge where you really get assets flowing in and out, Shimmer
Right.
EVM to all the others, cool. But if it's just like game or application specific, then it's a bit of a, well, like you said,
Yeah.
why don't the other networks also finance part of it if they benefit from it? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So cool. And that's about it. I think recently as our funding, we funded Audit 1 with 10,000 USDT. That is the remaining. We let me see here. We are left with about 4,000 something USDT for expenses. um, yeah, 4,136, and that's of the 100,000. Um, that's just due to I think we got to wait till Marshall Islands and multi-sig to be able to liquidate into USTT. So we're probably on a hold for things. We're still going to accept proposals. We're still going to review them. Like one, the 3D NFT was very small, like a tier one. We thought we'd support it, but I let them know like, hey, we can't pay you right now, but we are going to earmark the asset, the USDT or the SMR for you. Don't worry. So it's just kind of a waiting game on that sense. The Marshall Islands, it's either July 16th, which is 30 days, or sorry, June 16th, which is 30 days, or I think it's, 30 days after that because they say 30 to 60 days. So it's either going to be next week, Friday, or I think July 13th.
Okay,
Yeah. So
cool.
not too far away.
Yeah.
And I think the multi sig from Sevrox is close, so we'll just see what the next couple weeks bring.
Yes. Sounds excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Philo, is there any news on? I know Dave did that recent post
Yeah.
about the EVM. Is there going to be like another campaign after?
No. There's
No.
just going to be another test phase,
Mm-hmm.
but without big. It's basically just you can run this with spammers or with whatever. They do an internal testing for this for those breaking changes that they introduced and the pruning. That's already starting, and then there will be uh, another public test phase, but without big trara and initiatives. The apps know, the apps will test the stuff, they will test their applications, they will see if all these little issues that had been there, if this all is resolved, and then if everybody's happy with it, then it's free to go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you think Dave will give a engineer update again at some point?
At some point, definitely, yeah. As soon as there is something to talk, Dave will do that. Yeah. Yeah. At the
Cool.
moment, they're quietly doing all these mystery magic engineering thing, building, testing, fixing, and yeah, making everything possible. And then once stuff is there, then there will be a next announcement.
Nice.
Cool. So if
Any
there are
questions?
questions in the audience, let's go for that. But if not,
Once, twice.
yeah, then let's shut it down here today and see you again next.
Perhaps one
Yes.
question from me.
Hi, Thomas.
Perhaps, hi, Olga. Hi, Laura. Perhaps you can figure out how the timeline is about these phases, or where I can have a look on it. You described before in your speech the four phases or three phases. I don't
Yeah.
know. And is there a timeline with
Yes. We got Thomas.
yes,
Yeah.
and where can I have a look on it?
So, sorry, the phases, you mean as in the voting phases, or?
Yes.
In the Shimmer, it's part of the wiki. In the Shimmer wiki, we have a governance section. I'll link it here.
Yeah, I discovered already. So I have, so I will have only a deeper look in the document, and I think it will answer it.
Yes, there's an intro. I think there's a short text. The first article is governance intro. So you have it's quite easy. You have phase 1 is minimum of 2 weeks discussion. Then phase 2 is a 7-day poll. And then phase 3, it takes all together 14 days with 7 days pre-vote and 7 days counting. Yeah, so basically from start of proposal until you have a final result, it's like a minimum of 5 weeks process to get a proposal through the whole system.
Okay, thanks. As you mentioned before, who is able to read have a big advantage. Thanks. I will do
No,
my homework.
it's a lot of stuff and it's all confusing, but it should be in the governance section quite good to find.
Okay, thanks.
All right, cool. Thanks for the question. Always good to see. I'll have to look if we can make it more visible or clearer. But yeah. Anyway, thanks everyone. See you next week, Thursday, 4 p.m. Berlin time. Until then, I'll try to share a Google Doc with the changes a little bit beforehand. So maybe somebody of you can find time to look into it. If not, let's talk next week. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.